Good afternoon and welcome to a very, very special afternoon. Of course, a special tribute to a very, very close and dear friend of ours in Mick Nolan. Hi mate, how are you? Of course, I think the one common denominator we all share in this room is our knowledge of Mick and what an indelible mark that he's left on each and every one of us. And I'm sure, knowing Mick, unfortunately, the sad circumstance of bringing us all together here, he would not want us to be spending an afternoon embroiled in melancholy. This is going to be a celebration in exactly the manner in which he would want it, have a lot of mirth, a lot of banter, and a joyous and raucous afternoon. So without further ado, I think it would be fair and appropriate if we all stood up, charge our glasses, and pay a fitting tribute to the behemoth of an individual in Mick Nolan. Mick Nolan. Just a minute's silence, thank you. We'll observe. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Right, now just quickly to enlighten you on the format. It is, as I said, it's going to be a fun afternoon. We're paying homage to a wonderful and great man who's touched us in many and varied ways. But it is going to be a celebration, and that is the emphasis at the behest of the family. And we've got a number of entertaining features throughout the course of the afternoon. Now, just to quickly enlighten you, we do have a raffle. It's $10 a ticket or 3 for $20. The raffle prizes are attached there on your table. There are going to be auction items later on, some fantastic memorabilia is also going to be auctioned. You'll hear from a number of people throughout the course of the afternoon. Hear from Mick's coaches, some of the great administrators that led clubs from both Queensland and down in Melbourne. Some of the players that he played with. I think everyone in this room has got a wonderful Mick Nolan story, there's no doubt about that. So enjoy the afternoon, nestle in, settle in, enjoy the entree. We're well on the way to Australia's a wonderful nation. We've had a terrific year this year. We've had a mealy-mouthed apology, we've said sorry to everyone, we've cleansed our soul. We even had the good vision. What else did we do this year? Remember, we released David Hicks from Guantanamo Bay. And what did we do? We sent him to Adelaide. As though the poor bastard hadn't suffered enough already. Now, I strongly suggest that'll be the theme for the remainder of the afternoon. And those that might have been in the coma for the last 40 years or have been at a refugee detention centre at Baxter in Darwin. My name is Sam Kekovich and I'll officiate as your MC throughout the course of the afternoon. So God bless and continue with the spirit. Thank you.
In every heart there is a drum that beats steady and strong. It does not know defeat. I feel it high and know the sound of true belief. In every standing tall, the proudest we could be. I cannot fall, for I recall we were born in majesty. And when the long night had been fought and won,
Nolan hasn't been off the ball since the start of the game.
and we will raise our hands, and we will touch the sky. Together we will dance in rows of gold, and we will lead the world remembering that we were kings when we were kings. Now is the time, here is the mountain top. When one man climbs, the rest are lifted up. We'll every step we're closer, yeah, to a higher destiny. And when we reach out to claim the throne, every man will know. And we will raise our hands, and we will touch the sky. Together we will dance in rows of gold, and we will lead the world remembering when we were kings, when we were kings.
North Melbourne just about ready to fly that flag. Their first ever as the ball goes deep to attack. Up towards Wade and Bremner. Pushed away, grabbed by Burns. Over to Shimmerbush, another goal. Oh, they're streaking away.
And when the long night has
Down to the
been
ground.
fought,
Trotters after.
we'll stand
North Melbourne's first ever flag.
and raise our hands, together we will dance in rows of gold, and we will lead the world remembering that we were kings when we were kings. When we were kings.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. At some stage, I know there'll be various groups associated with this gathering here this afternoon that in some shape or form would like to make a contribution to what we call mixed pot, you know, as a nice token gesture. Not in the formal role of a contribution, but this morning the North Melbourne Supporters Group, and where are they sitting? If the girls could please stand, if you could, two girls. They which is a wonderful gesture, just whipped around. The supporters are fantastic, and that just gives you an insight into the culture of the North Melbourne Football Club, and raised $1,000, and that's a very generous donation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, what was that phone account number we had, Ron? No. Hey, Ronnie, grab that. Just in keeping with the constitution of the North Melbourne Football Club now, we're all transparent. The brown paper bags are well and truly gone. They are changing times. And you look at a gathering like this, it's absolutely fantastic. But then again, you look at this gathering of this microcosm of wealth and influence and academia, and I defy anyone who have thought that in the short space of 2 decades, who would have thought that as we stand here this afternoon, that the best golfer in the world would be black, the best rap dancer would be white. The Swiss would hold the America's Cup. The French would accuse the Americans of being arrogant. And the Germans would refuse to go to fucking war. All in the short space of 2 decades. Isn't that amazing? See, we at North Melbourne can get away with a bit of irreverence and a bit of licence, because that's what made our lamb commercials. Anyone not seen my lamb commercials of the last 4 years? Now, I didn't want to make this afternoon all about me, but it's not a bad start. There'd be no one more famous than me in this room. But it just shows you in this country we've had this propensity of immersing ourselves in political correctness, overdosing in tolerance and not being who we are, because there's this endemic belief in our culture that the universal panacea is money. In fact, that's a lot of crap. Our greatest asset in this country is our wonderful culture, our generosity of spirit, the sense of fair play and self-deprecation, and saying it as it is. Now, I've got this wonderful notion that I'm going to use in the next commercial, and I want to run this past you because I think this is a wonderful focus group, and I reckon this is representative of Middle Australia. And what I'm contemplating doing for the next commercial is because, as you know, peril is very much at our doorstep, and the topography of the landscape we live in is quite undulating and very risky, love. And what I'm contemplating doing, when you consider the enormous amount of money we spend in diplomacy and rhetoric with very limited success putting out these spot fires, what I'm contemplating doing is buying a vacant block of dirt in Lakemba, in Sydney, and in Lalor in Melbourne, where a number of our Middle Eastern brothers reside, a handful of Wogs, and a lot of Aussies. And I'm going to have that Australia Day barbecue that we're renowned for, and I'm going to have this wonderful Australian love fest that we're renowned for. And I'm going to have my lamb chops and my barbecue simmering there, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to invite a couple of those muftis along, and I'm going to have them side by side with me. And as my lamb chops are simmering, I'm going to give the muftis a set of tongs each, and whilst the brotherhood are all embracing in this mad love fest, I'm going to raise their arms in unison and yell out, "Islam is good." So it has got some legs. I just need a couple of representatives to go to the mosque to send the invitation to the muftis. Ah, yes. It is a changing world. Very much a changing world. I remember I looked at that wonderful footage of when we played football, and I looked at the adult faces and the confused looks on some of the contemporaries in the room, and they must have been wondering what the heck was going on. But I'll tell you something in this room, and I'll expedite this because I didn't realise that the bulk of my audience are rapidly approaching the Fridays and Saturdays of their lifespan. In fact, even Sunday morning's not out of the question in certain quarters. But I'll tell you what was great, girls, about the time when we played, that wonderful era of football, that rare footage you're seeing now. Australia was a wonderful nation, not this soft-cocked nation that we've become now. This nation of Mrs. Jessops that are peering over people's backyard fences and looking for a banana peel to slip and trip. No, we were happy with our lot. We're happy to jump in the trenches, over the parapet, draw bayonets and charge down the enemy, and couldn't give a fuck about the outcome. And I'll tell you what else was great, girls. You would love this. Sex was safe and parachuting was dangerous. A wedgie was a shoe. A shag was a haircut. Prostate meant lying on the floor pissed. And of course, pussy was a cat. But anyhow... So it's all changed, it's all gone ahead of me. I've got no idea. It's now the Y and Z generation. I'm not that smart. I've got a fairly extensive lexicon, but all these new terminologies creeping into it. Things like metrosexuals, love. Do you know what a metrosexual is? You would know, I know. Let me tell you in my day what it meant, having a route in the tram on the way home from training. So it's all a changing. It's a changing world. So we're in keeping with the spirit. Now I'm going to bring to the podium and I'm going to interview, which is a very difficult assignment, one of the truly greats. Now, he's the only one that doesn't realise how great he is, but he's the greatest Australian that we have in this country. And I say that with any fear of equivocation. He has... Don't get ready, Barras, it's not you yet. Stop trying to... You spent a fucking lifetime trying to second-guess me. But not only is he the greatest Australian, he's without a doubt the greatest coach that ever coached our game. You got no idea how far ahead of his time he was. But fortunately he had the intelligent side that he had that could understand some of his shit. And he was just an outstanding leader, and it comes as no surprise that everyone that played under him, and I say this with the greatest degree of respect, that each and every one of us succeeded in our private and personal lives. One or two teetered over the precipice, but managed to save some of them. But by and large, most of us succeeded under him, and it was all attributed to the tutelage of the great RDB, and of course a host of other good North Melbourne people. I was going to leave you out, Alan, and Ron Joseph, who used to pay all my SP bills when I was going to shithouse. But anyhow... So without further ado, would you please make him welcome the greatest Australian, the great coach, the super coach, Ronald Dale Barassi.
Thank you, Sam, for nothing. It's great to be here, and I must just be very solemn first because it is a solemn occasion, but Sam has been in touch with the big fella, and the big fella said, have a bit of North Melbourne fun, and that's what he's done. This man here is the only person I've ever met who can transform himself into an angel just with one word. He's unbelievable with words, and it caused me a lot of angst as coach. I've had a few gongs as
just
coach.
Just stick to the terms of reference and stop rambling. Yeah,
I've had a lot of gongs as coach, but what people forget is that I coached Brent Croswell, a fella called Cowton, and Kekovich, all in the one team. And later on came along Crackers Keenan. I should have got gongs just for that.
Ron, just quickly, as I said, it is a celebration, and we must move on, but the big bloke, I remember vividly when Ron Joseph wheeled him out onto Arden Street. You said, who is this fat prick? No, Nettie, with the greatest degree of respect, Ron was going to give him the arse there and then. He said, who, in your own words, what did you say?
Well, it's good of you to ask me in my own words. Yes, when I first spotted, you've got to go into the background of AFL football, VFL football at the time. There were some clubs, poorly run clubs, in my opinion, who the president, for instance, could let his nephew have a little 10 minutes on the track. All that sort of thing. Well, I regarded the training track as, hey, you don't get on here unless you really deserve to, etc., etc., etc. So I was very strict about who got on the North Melbourne senior training track. So I spot this guy, and I just couldn't believe myself. This guy had very small legs, small but tall, small arms, but nothing else was small. And I couldn't believe this fellow could play football, and I said, who the bloody hell, and that's what I said, who the bloody hell is this guy? And I was ready to really raise hell with that one. My assistant coach, John Dugdale, was there, and he knew the story. Said, don't worry, Ron, Ron Joseph has invited him. Well, I knew that Ron Joseph knew the rules and was sensible enough to know what the whole thing was about. So that was okay. Later on, I really checked out Ronnie and the reasons why. But this guy went on and became one of the great players for North Melbourne. We have a guy here today who probably benefited more from Mick Nolan's expertise in the ruck, ding, 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 with the palm. A fellow called Barry Cable, one of the greatest rovers ever in our game, and he said he's the best player that he's ever rucked to.
Ron, I know you had many attempts to sort of cull his weight a little bit, you know, because you thought he was ungainly, you thought he was overweight. I remember we had the Biafrans. Remember we brought a Biafran team out, he ate 3 of them one night. And then you asked him what was his diet, and he took you to Kentucky Fried and the pizza shop, and you thought you might try to change that. You had a lot of attempts, didn't you?
Well, we tried a few things with him, but he kept beating us by playing well. So when a person's playing well, you've got less traction in your argument that you're putting up to this person who's playing well. But no, he was a man who he had a lot of character. And he was a character by his shape and the way he played, and he's funny. He liked a bit of grog at the end after a game, etc. He had all that. He was a character, but he had character, and that's what you look for particularly in a combative sport like Aussie rules.
Beautifully said. Would you give a big round of applause to the great Australian, great coach, Ronald Dale Barassi. And I think it'd be appropriate now if we call upon the guy that steered North Melbourne. The renaissance of North Melbourne, it can be arguably said, commenced in the early 70s, or about 73, 74, when this individual took over. And of course 75 was that magical moment when the club won its first ever premiership. And at the helm was none other than probably its greatest and most loyal servant in the great Alan Aylett. Well, Toad, where do you start with Mick?
Well, let me just say this for a start. I just endorse what Sam said earlier in the day, and we've already spoken to Nettie, and I mean, we really want this to be a day that we all remember, really, and the reason everyone has been brought to this location, and the arrangements were there before Mick unfortunately passed away in the last week. So that was all organised before. But I would like to look on it as a day that we remember Mick Nolan for what he was. And we're all got a very, very close relationship somewhere along the line. We've been touched by Mick Nolan. I just mentioned to someone outside there are very, very few people, and most of us here today have heard many stories about many people, but there are very, very few people that have had stories told about them as much as Mick Nolan. And Nettie, to you and the family, you know, we all feel for you, but notwithstanding that, we're going to have a good day today. Tomorrow's tomorrow, and let's say to the Nolan family, you know, thank you for being a part of today and letting us remember Mick Nolan for what we remember.
What are some of your fondest memories, Toad? Do you remember him when he walked off with our cup in 75? We're at the...
I think the most challenging memory that I've got of Mick, and it took 3 years of boardroom discussion, but we were very, very disturbed when he first started playing with the Kangaroos, or North Melbourne as it was then, and I think it's now back to North Melbourne now. But anyway, that's the way it all goes. But we remember Mick for when he played and whatever posture he was in, with the traditional shorts that the players were issued, he always showed the cleft. You know, it went halfway down his cheeks. And it did command a bit of editorial space over a period of time, so much so that into the third year of him playing at North Melbourne, we had to put the serious matters aside, or the relative serious matters aside, and discuss Mick Nolan's shorts. And as most of you guys would have served on football club committees, I mean, that's not an unusual situation where we do spend a lot of time talking on things that don't really matter. But nevertheless, it took us to another era, really, because we got together the three most important clothes designers in Toorak. And Mick was summoned to a place, and all of these guys, and there was one lady, two guys and one lady, they took Mick's measurements and they presented them to the board at the next board meeting and said, these are the designer shorts that we've designed for Mick. Anyway, Mick wore them. First game, still with the designer shorts, still half the cleft showing. The very next game he went to design number 2, same result. Third game, exactly the same result with designer shorts number 3. So we never ever really got it right. And that to me is just a memory of Mick Nolan. The other thing I suppose was the fact that days are different today, of course, but a lot of those occasions after a game, the guys would come back to our home, private home in Moonee Ponds, Melbourne. And often the Saturday nights went into the very early hours of the Sunday mornings. But we all managed to turn up to training on the Sunday morning, and it didn't take long for the guys to run 3 or 4 laps around the ground, and then led by Johnny Burns and Barry Goodingham, most of them are here today. Well, then it was just a drink fest for 2 or 3 hours. But notwithstanding that, I just often wonder, you know, is that a thing that we've missed in football, you know? I mean, the comradeship of the North Melbourne players who played in that 1975 era, 1975, 76, 77 and onwards, was just a wonderful era. And was it because of blokes like Mick Nolan, John Burns, Malcolm Blight, those sort of characters that made the North Melbourne Football Club what it is today? It's a wonder. But Mick, a delightful character, Sam, you know, just a wonderful person, and you know, we all respect him deeply.
Thank you, Alan. Give him a big round of applause, Dr. Alan Aylett. Which leads me to an excellent segue. I did want to make reference to that, and it is a little bit boastful, you might think. They had to call in 3 designers for Mick's arse, but with my shorts, they had to work on the front. The apparel was, without being boastful. The good Lord was fairly generous when he handed certain parts of my anatomy out. I didn't have any apparel from Toorak, but let me assure you, I routed most of the street down the holes, left and right centre. Without further ado, now, you know, in football, the administrators can be boring. The coaches and the administrators are backroom doors. They don't really know what goes on. The great and true stories are the ones that are out in the battlefield, in the trenches, and the smell of liniment. At half-time in the dunnies, when we light up the cigarettes, and, you know, when the coaches are dressing the side and no one listens, and all that little bit of banter. But the guy that was privy, and he stuck fat with us all these years, our premiership captain, the great Barry Davis. Now, I know you're a bit of a goody two-shoes, but you were privy to all those little goings-on behind the scenes, and what we loved about you, you abstained from running up to Ronnie and say, Ronnie, look what I thought.
I'm not exactly sure how I follow that. Thank you, Sam. A fantastic introduction as usual. I did speak with Ron the first day that Mick came out onto the training track, and I remember doing this and saying, you know, like, it's not probably a good idea that someone as big as Mick can be here if he can't catch the ball, kick it, pick it up off the ground. That'd be a help. Anyway, we watched him for a while, and both of us went, strike. He can mark the ball, he can damn well kick it, and he can actually bend. The other thing about Mick at this stage was that he had a jumper that didn't actually meet the shorts either. The shorts had slipped a little bit, but the jumper didn't quite. Is there a shot of Mick? He was up there before, but he had a chest that had sort of slipped a little bit. And it was sort of around about here. So we decided not just to change the shorts, Alan. The shorts were pretty interesting. You could never miss him because you always knew where he was. You know, if you're looking at him back, you could see where he was. That's him. Little cracks showing at the back. However, there was a bit of a problem about jumpers. You know, we wanted him to be able to run from one end of the ground to the other. And with the jumper so tight, he could hardly breathe. You know, we were running around in these little... So we came up with the lace-ups. And these were jumpers that sort of parted, and you had these laces that pulled the jumper really tight.
Like
You know,
corsets.
yeah, like corsets, just like a corset.
We used to dress up in those days.
Yeah, we did. It was very special, you know. We used to stand and 1 foot on the chest and do the pull and all that sort of stuff. So Mick was the reason that we used these lace-ups. The only problem was we never got it together, but the string was across the front. He always looked immaculate, though. We came to the grand final in 1975. We decided we had to be pretty smart here. So we needed to do something pretty sneaky. So with Barry Cable, we had him run out in number 44. The truth was he'd forgotten to pack his jumper, but I won't tell anyone that. So with Mick, we came to Mick and we thought, now how are we going to camouflage Mick? There's absolutely no way we could do that. Absolutely no way. Everyone in Melbourne knew who Mick was. They knew him because he was a standout, not just as a person, but as a player. And both Barry and I were just talking about the fact that the first time I saw him in the ruck, I said to him, the first game, I said, look, Mick, do you reckon you could knock the next one? It was a boundary throw. Do you reckon you could knock it over the back with your left hand? He looked at me as though I was like mad. I said, well, come on, let's see if you can do it. Bing, first one, over the back. Oof, free kick. Probably hand pass to you, Sam. It's the only hand pass you ever got from me then, if it was. He was such a very controlled, and I think Barry would agree with this, wouldn't you, Baz? Yeah? He was one of the best I think you did say that, didn't you, Ron? Yeah. He was one of the best tap ruckmen I've ever worked with. He held his ground beautifully, and he just knew about footy. One stage we were a bit concerned about the fellow that, you know, he wouldn't be able to run up and down the ground, so we decided that we'd let him run across the ground from side to side. And so they'd just take the ruck on either side of the ground and do the centre bounces. That wasn't good enough for him. He wanted to go forward and kick a couple of goals, as he did. Some of the fantastic goals we were recalling on the way up in the plane, and he could kick the ball beautifully. Memorable times, and I'm glad to have shared it with so many people, Mick included, as well as your good self, Sam. They were fantastic times, a time that I think we can all be fairly proud of.
Yeah, I think beautifully said. A big round of applause, Barry Davis.